Hello friends, and welcome to the Season 23 Treaty United Building a Nation recap of the Twitch save over on Twitch. Obviously, if you do enjoy these, of course, drop a like. That would be bloody fantastic. It lets me know you want me to keep doing them. Of course, we're live right now over on Twitch doing our transfer window. We've got a lot of players joining us already, which you'll be excited to see, as well as a decent chunk of change for us to go and find some new guys. So no doubt we'll be finding a lot of cool players today, as well as doing some Champions League action, as per. So if you want to jump over, dump VO5 styling wax in the comments. Not in the well, you can put it in the comments here too, but in the chat, and I'll probably forget what you mean. I'll be baffled by it, and it'll be brilliant. And of course, if you want to watch the full VODs, they're over on the second channel, link in the description. They go up a day after each of the streams. Without any further ado, youth intake. So this is the youth intake this year. This is Kieran Fitzgerald. Now, I must admit, this youth intake was the first youth intake we've had in about 10 years that wasn't half a star or 1 star. It was only 1.5 stars, and the talent wasn't exactly brilliant, but it was still better. And you might think, why would that matter? Well, that's because we decided that we were going to make a big change. Emmett Doran, legend of the save, is now our head of youth development. He retired at the end of the season. He said he wanted to become a Hoyd. We already had our brilliant head of youth development who'd done sod all for 15 years. So we decided, you know what? Emmett might be trash, and he really, really is. The only thing he has is good working with youngsters. The rest of his attributes are dog water, but it doesn't matter. And the first thing he does is come through with a better youth intake than we've had in 10 years, which is kind of mental. Still crap, but this guy, you know, Kieran Fitzgerald, he's not a bad player. He'd still be a decent goalkeeper for someone, just probably not us. But he's certainly the best player we've had in quite some time. Now, obviously, the loan farmer's been doing its thing and slowly recovering from the horrendousness of Sligo Rovers deciding to not take any of our players on loan. So most of this year has been about slowly rebuilding that, honestly. And it's been taking a little bit of time to do that. But we'll talk about that more in a little bit, because what you really want to hear for is signings in and out. So let's start with outs, because there have been some of them. First of which was Mahir Ermerdic, the centre back that we signed. He has never actually played for us. He's gone to Chelsea for £10 million because they offered me £10 million, and I thought, yeah, that seems like a good deal for a player that's probably not quite going to ever be able to get in our side, and was never going in the loan farm again after Sligo's debacle. So with that in mind, we sold him. I've also got a 50% next sale fee clause, which is operating at the moment at around about 10 million. So this deal could be worth £20 million to us. And this is what I mean. These signings are just keeping this club afloat at the moment and just flipping them occasionally. It works like a treat. Next up, Enrique San Martin. Went to PSG, 4.4 million. Got a clause on him as well. Again, they wanted him. We didn't think he was ever going to play for us anymore, so we decided, you know what, screw it. Let's see what happens down the line. We got some money for him. Backup goalkeeper Valentino Vidovic has left the club to go to Al Ain over in, I'm actually not sure where that is, in the Middle East, for £1.1 million. He's gone. We had a new guy, Mikolic, a younger Croatian goalkeeper coming through that we decided was going to be our first choice long term after Suluban Mihov finally retires. But for the moment, he's still knocking about, so we needed someone else. John Joe O'Diaz, who's now got 23 caps for Ireland, by the way. What a man. He's gone to Alaves for £8 million. Again, I think there was a clause in there too. Needless to say, he just wasn't going to fit with our new style of football, so we decided, screw it, let's crack on with this and get him out for on loan as well, because we are playing a different tactic, which I showed you last time around, and I think it's made a huge difference, but of course it did unsettle a few players who were no longer going to get in the squad, mostly wingers. Thus continues the winger exodus as Espen Falkenhorst left to go to Shakhtar for £1 million, but the reason for that was because his contract was expiring and they gave us a bit of cash. But it's nice to see Espen get himself a move. Hopefully he can get some football there. Made nearly 200 league appearances for us. Vinicius Rodolfo, the left-sided player that I spent way too much money on a couple of seasons, also left to go to Botafogo for 800 and something thousand pounds. Probably one of the worst pieces of business of the entire save, honestly. Regret it immensely, but it happened and he's gone. Speaking of more wingers leaving, Choite Hoon went to AEK in Greece for £13.5 million, which I actually think was good business. Maybe could have got more at other periods, particularly as our squad values have now updated, which has been really useful. So our players are worth more money. But needless to say, again, and I was training him to play wing back in our new system, but at the end of the day, I just decided, you know what, it's probably time that we just let him go, get the cash in and use that money elsewhere. So that's what we did. One more big deal was Eric Arboleda, who was the youngster I brought from Ecuador. He's a good player, don't get me wrong, but I just didn't think he was ever going to quite be able to do it here. And so when Benfica said, hey, we'll give you 11 to 12 million pounds for him, I thought, yeah, I'll do that. Not only that, there's a 50% an next sale fee clause, which in the future I have sold, and I think the deal now moved up to like 20 million for this guy. A guy that I paid like 800 grand for. So again, this is just financing us at the moment. And as much as he is a good player, he just wasn't quite good enough for us. And that really should tell you about how good this team is now. But the biggest out of them all was Octavio Solis, who went to Chelsea for £35.5 million with a 50% of next sale fee clause on top of that, which should eventually end up netting us close to 50 million in the total deal, which is not bad money, again, for a player who probably wasn't going to get in our side once we'd done away with the wingers. But, you know, selling him to Chelsea was a risk. But again, I just felt like we had to reinvest that money in this team. team, and he wanted to move, so we decided to make it happen. And I do wish we'd waited a little bit more, though, because we probably could have got moon money after the player squad values have updated. We've got players now worth over 100 million here that we just wouldn't have before. Octavio Solis probably would have been worth about 80 million in the new valuations, but you just can't predict these things, can you? But that makes do of all the outs. Now let's check the ins, which is where the interesting stuff starts. First up, good business, Ivo Pereira, £850,000 from Braga, young goalkeeper, 17-year-old Portuguese. Look at that value. He was 5-star rated, and I think he is again now in like the current date, which is like middle of early January. So still fantastic. Great value, just insane value for 850 grand. Nico Schmitz on a free transfer from Wolfsberger, not particularly brilliant. He is under a bid at the moment, so I think he will get a loan, which is nice. Next up was 2 Feet Gannon. Now, the reason I signed this guy was not really anything to do with me needing him to play for us. It was, you also might notice that he's currently playing for Hoffenheim. So basically, he's the guy that was saying at this stage in my career, for the first 13 years of his career. Eventually, we just pestered him every year because I wanted to try and, he was so good and he's been this good pretty much since he was about 18. He hasn't actually grown all that much, but we were just desperate to sign him and could never understand why he wouldn't sign for us. Eventually, we got the deal done for £4.1 million. Then kind of decided, well, actually, we don't really care about this dude. So I just flipped him to Hoffenheim for what? For £4.1 million. Deal done. Off you go, 2 feet. Next up, Luis Mesa for £400,000 from Caracas. I mean, Venezuelan striker. Top value. Hopefully we'll get him a loan. Just another one of these types of players. Super happy with these. Then Max Galvin. His name is actually Maximiliano Galvan. But, you know, given the Galvin links here, we had to make the deal pretty good. He was like £4 million. Absolute waste of money. Mostly came out of our meme budget because of the Galvin connection. Tell a lie, he was 2.3 million, which isn't quite as bad. Then there was Nate Piszek, playing for Sligo Rovers on loan at the moment. Signed him for £1.2 million from Olimpia Ljubljana over in Slovenia. Again, really strong attacking midfielder. Great value. Just all the things you want out of these types of signings, and I'm extremely happy. And he's been out on loan, of all people, at Sligo Rovers this season. That's right. Despite sending our entire loan army back, they then proceeded to take a few new players on loan from us, but they never accepted our loan requests. They always put the bids in themselves. Really weird behaviour from them. Next up, Austin Steele for £525,000 from Independiente Medellin. Again, mostly we're interested in him because he was called Austin Steele, and he was a Colombian. However, still a good value player. Mainly we look to him because he can actually tackle a little bit. So as a wing-back, he's certainly not awful. But, yeah, I'd like to get him a loan, really. In fact, is he even on the dev list? He's not. That's weird. Another South American striker, Ronald Torres, £400,000 from Atletico Nacional. There's a lot of this. This is just what we do. We just take punts on players when they're this cheap because we figure either they'll work for us or they won't. Or they can be a loan player, or we can just flip them. And that's the beauty of it. On the same value, Samir Alifazic, who has actually played an okay amount of games for us this season. He's played like in the league here, he's played in the cup, he's played a little bit for us this year, and some friendlies as well. But again, he was £700,000 from Dinamo Zagreb. Same kind of deal. And hopefully we can get him a loan, which is the key. Then Spinello Williams, another of these players, Mamelodi Sundowns. I think he was about £800,000, which is a bit more, but still, the value's so high that it was fully worth it. Tell a lie, he was $300,000, which is way better. Then is Juan Mamani, a guy who I'm genuinely excited about. £600,000 from Sporting Cristobal in Peru. He's a wing-back. He's still 5 stars. The value is enormous. These are the guys I really like. We have to troll through some of those other players and spend a little bit of cash here and there on perhaps some dead wood in order to find guys like Juan Mamani before they end up signing a pro contract somewhere else. And that's why we were so desperate to get him in when we did. And I think for 600 grand, he's very excellent. That off the ball is a bit of an issue for him when he's playing wing back, but other than that, I think there's a really good player under here, and in the coming seasons, hopefully we'll see that. I don't even really want to loan him. I think he's good enough for us to actually play games. Then there is Bogusław Sikowski, Polish striker, 18 years old, signed from Pogon. Very strange signing, this one. I think it was £1.3 million, but look at the value. And the reason we signed him is because he reminded us a bit of Stanisław Garnice, that Polish striker we signed from Legia, who just had outrageous attributes despite not having the highest potential ceiling. And his value has been going up and up and up this season because when you can already see that he's gaining star value at the moment. I think there's a really good player here. And he has actually scored a couple of goals for us this season too, even though that wasn't really the intention. He's still one for the loan farm, but I don't know. He feels like the type of guy that we could maybe sell to like a Chelsea for £20 million in a couple of seasons and just make huge money. Then there's Iwu Shamu, who is a Romanian goalkeeper. We basically signed him because, well, actually his value's gone up quite a lot too. We didn't spend a lot of money on him. I think it was like 600 grand. Might even be less than that, actually. No, it was 600 grand. The reason we signed him is because we found he has one of the most amazing double nationalities. He is a Romanian Beninese. Just, you'd love to see it. What a beautiful connection. So we brought him in, and he's here as well. And he's actually not bad. Good reflexes, good aerial reach, good one-on-ones. He's not a bad keeper. Then there is Martin Vorga Nielsen, who, of course, was £4.3 million. So he cost a little bit because he was playing at Mulder. But we liked what we saw at his attributes-wise. We brought him in. Obviously, we've been calling him Big Vag because how could you not when his name's like that? But needless to say, I think he's a decent player. Hopefully, again, one for the loans. Then a slightly more expensive signing, but one I'm genuinely excited about, and this is Lane. One, because his name's Lane. He's joined us for 3.2 million from Atletico Mineiro, but he has great attributes. He has got a loan. Not yet, he hasn't, but he will have a loan by the time you actually join stream to Shamrock Rovers. So that's really good. So they're getting a guy like this kind of quality. I'm very happy with that. Getting him out on loan is super important to me. So yeah, really quality player. I really like him. Then there's João Carvalho, £2.2 million from Portimonense over in Portugal. Again, just gaining value, getting these youngsters in, getting them out on loan. I think he gets a loan as well, which is really good news. Just getting these guys in and around there. He's unhappy at the moment here because I didn't strengthen the attack, which is mental when you consider who our attackers are, that he would even get to demand that at 17. But there's still some weird glitchiness with this save about stuff like that. Then there's Kader Cisse, £39,000 from Diambars. Kind of like I was trying to go for another Mbaye Sal type of deal. Not quite as good, obviously, but still worth decent money and still has excellent attributes. So a decent player nevertheless. Hope to get him out on loan. Scott Terry joined us from the MK Dons for 86 grand. He was a guy we picked up really cheap because we found him and he's on loan at Watford. So at least he's getting a loan. Then another one of these outrageous Bulgarian cheap players. £49,000 for Petar Denev. Just, I mean, look at the state of him for £49,000. Already comes with it. He could be the next Stefan Valev, honestly. He's got that kind of quality about him. And I'm very, very excited to see what he could do. But I love finding these cheap ones. Bulgaria is such a slept-on market for players. There's so many good Bulgarians in this save. And lastly, a signing I'm not entirely enthralled with. Mohamed Magdi, £2.5 million from Al Ali. He's a decent defender, he's good in the air, and he actually has good temp poles, but the potential maybe wasn't quite where I was hoping it would be. I still think he'll make an excellent defender for someone, even if perhaps that player or that club isn't actually us. Now, you might look at that and go, okay, you spent a lot of cash, but no one's spectacularly big. So that's where things change, and you'll see these signings when you come over to stream. We've got a few future transfers arranged, but I'm not going to show you them right now. You'll have to come and actually have a look at them personally. They'll be in next week's, next season's video as well, because they'll have joined us permanently by now. But we've spent like £50 million on like 4 guys. Some big signings coming in, including a centre-back who's like 15, and I've spent 20. I think I've broken our transfer record to sign him. Screw it, I'm going to show you. I can't not. Here he is. This is Hamza Saki. He's 16 now, of course. He'll be joining us in January. We've spent, well, it's 17 million. It's actually 10 up front, but it could rise to as high as 24 million for this guy, because when you see a player who's 6'6", has great temp poles, other than the aggression here, and is already that good at the age of 16, it just felt like an inevitability with a resolute personality that this guy could be an absolute worldie. So it was worth us dropping moon money on him. And that's exactly what we did. And the other moon money signing, just ignoring the potential for a second, I don't think that's correct. For a while, he was at full maxed out 5-star without the little half star. And it only updated for no reason once we'd agreed the transfer, even though he was 100% scout before. So that's kind of weird. Needless to say, this is Kaan Yildiz, another ridiculously young player who we signed again while he was 15 for £13 million from Fenerbahce. He won't join us for another season and a half, though, unfortunately, because he has to be 18. But again, getting game time for Fenerbahce in the meantime, which he will hopefully do, I think by the time he joins us, he could be first team squad ready, honestly. And I think it was well worth us dumping the money. But of course, you will see these guys later. There is some more as well, but these are the big two. We spent there's a lot of January signings, let's be honest. Loan Farm has got back up to 53 players, which is not too bad. And a lot of the guys that were sent back by Sligo have managed to find games elsewhere. Not all of them, but a lot of them. I think Mehmet was possibly one of them. A lot of them went to Dundalk as it goes, which was very helpful. As you can see, Sligo did pick up the likes of Jukanovic, but they only picked up players that had come. They never took any of the guys back that were there before for seemingly no reason. Ashanu's still doing mad things at Derry. There's a lot of players here on this list. A few players to clubs outside of Ireland, but that's just how it goes sometimes. Still, you can see how it breaks down is relatively straightforward. Bows have got a decent chunk. Derry are getting more and more, which is going to be helpful in a few seasons, hopefully, if we get that extra European spot. Dundalk have now got over a page of players. It's astonishing how many players they've taken from us. It's great. Shamrock, theirs is growing by the day as well. Sligo have 2, but it will grow hopefully a little bit more. And St. Pat's have a decent amount of them as well. But I'm pretty certain all the St. Pat's guys have come back because I think they got relegated, or certainly got very close to getting relegated. And they kind of tend to take that badly. As for the league, fairly straightforward. We did win it in the end. Once again, though, failing to get that unbeaten season. Yeah, we lost to Sligo in this season rather. But you can see the top 5, once again, the same kind of teams. Sligo as a result of losing. So when they sent all their loans back, they had 5 senior players in their squad. So they had to spend huge amounts of money rebuilding their entire team for seemingly no reason. So I don't know what was going on there. Luckily, it wasn't bad enough that they actually ended up costing them Europe. It did obviously not help them in Europe because they couldn't register the players, but there you go. Needless to say, it meant that at least they managed to come 5th in the league this season. So there's something to that. Bows were able to get a much better season going again with a few extra loanees from us, although they have now sent back Fiedel Faye and he refuses to go back out on loan to them. So that's a little bit annoying. But needless to say, again, Dundalk were fantastic this season. They've really kind of established themselves again as the big 5. Now, I suspect that we're going to have more European places in the coming seasons. And that's why the likes of St. Pat's and Derry, who are the other 2 sides who are taking our loans, need to get their shit together. And I'm thinking that they will do so relatively quickly, which which is nice. You'll also notice that Thijs Freeze, 23 goals and 23 assists this season. This man has had the best season I've ever seen, probably. What did he actually end up on? It says here 30 goals and 36 assists, but that's not actually technically true. I'll just quickly show you this, because it's actually a better amount than that. In the end, he ended up with 42 assists and 34 goals in 47 matches, which is a grand total of 76 goal contributions in one season. And yes, he won the Ballon d'Or. And yes, Stefan Valev managed to win European Golden Boy, because it's not really a huge surprise. Valev got 41 goals and 20 assists this season from striker. Araujo got 46 goals. It's just outrageousness. Filtering it further, Bilbia got 18 goals. Christensen got 14. Alaku with 10. Manea got 10. Look at some of these assisters as well. There's some really big ones in that. And he actually got 22 assists this season from left wing back. I gave him the same PPMs as Terry Cloty, and it's made him absolutely explode as a forward prospect for us this year. And he is still here, having signed a new contract. It actually happened. The man wanted the same money, so what a legend. He's still here. He's a 5-star current ability player in this team. It's outrageous. Just to show you how good he actually is. He is just astonishing. And that's what I meant about the player values as well. 92 to 110 million he's now worth. And the rest of the squad is certainly gaining those kind of levels. So yeah, we are absolutely stacked at the moment. So that's of course the league. Drogheda, I think, set a new record bad, but it's to be expected when they perform as poorly as that. In the second tier, Cabinteely won the league, and I think they could set a record bad next season with that. Unfortunately, Longford did come second, but wasn't enough to win the playoffs, and as a result, the Tycoon-related team stay in the second tier while spending the same amount of money on wages as the 5th best side in the top flight. It's mad. But now, what you're really interested in, Europe. What has happened to the Irish sides and us in Europe? It didn't start off well. We lost 5-4 to Juve. Luckily, the Thijs Freeze hat-trick, those 2 late goals, bailed us out. We had no right to lose this game, but it's just how Europe has been for us lately. Luckily, a 5-4 defeat made me feel like we could at least do it in the home leg against them, but what a result. We've had some mad games in Europe. In the end, though, it was 7-all on aggregate, as despite handing out another twatting, Juve just were able to score goals out of nothing in both, well, especially this leg, and eventually a 7-all draw went to penalties, which we managed to win because Luban Mihov saved the penalty. But I was about to be livid again, because we were smashing teams and they were just scoring out of nothing. But luckily, we got the result and pushed ourselves through to the quarterfinals. Well, luckily, we drew Porto, but it still took a 91st minute winner from Sal to give us the victory here. Only a 1-0 win as well, made me very fearful for the second leg. And that fear was compounded by the fact that we fell behind twice in this match before getting a 2-all draw away, with Valev and Limburg scoring the goals. But Limburg's goal sent us to the semi-finals, and we felt like there was progress being made, and then we drew Man City. Thankfully, though, we were actually able to pull out a very respectable 1-all draw at the Etihad. I think we were a bit fortunate, but it was the first game in ages that I'd actually felt like we were fortunate to win. It's usually the other way around. So Araujo's goal gave us a lead, and Andrew O'Kane's penalty for City. I mean, it was only the penalty. It was the only way they broke through us was the pen. But we needn't have worried, as the second leg was an absolute blowout. We took the lead, they equalised, but after that, it was all us. Lindy with a hat-trick, Freisy and Freezy, they all scored 6-1 to smash our way into a Champions League final. It just felt like everything had finally come good for us, and we very much deserved it. Unfortunately, though, it just was not quite to be, and for the second time in this save, we lose the Champions League final to Chelsea. This one was much closer than the last time around. They took their chance early in the first half with Pedro Sousa, but we certainly started coming back into it and had the better of most of the second half, and then, of course, scored the equaliser with Stanislav's back after 66 minutes, and we felt good. However, despite that dominance, they got 2 goals in 2 minutes out of nothing, and then we were able to get one straight back the other end, but it wasn't enough at that point, and yeah, well, Chelsea were deserved winners. It's still a bit of a shame, though, to lose to them twice now. That is 2 Champions League finals we've been to. So I guess it's progress, right? And I'm looking a lot better with this team now, and I think that this shape is definitely the way to go forward. It just seems to work for us in Europe. As for the Europa League, which was where Dundalk were, of course, they were knocked out by Rangers across 2 legs, but luckily Shamrock Rovers were able to beat Hearts. But you can see that Scotland had so many teams in this round. They had 5 sides in the Europa League knockouts, and an annoying amount of them managed to get through, particularly as we lost Dundalk, but at least Shamrock did us a favour. But that, unfortunately, was as far as it went, as they bottled it out to Dinamo Kiev in the next round, which really didn't help us at all. Now, Sligo, of course, got through, but then were actually dispatched by Dinamo Zagreb in the following round, because they lost all their players, and they weren't able to register anyone. I was surprised that they actually got as many goals and didn't lose by as much as they did, considering they had 5 players in their squad, and you know how European registration can work in the interim. So yeah, they did mad well to even get that result, to be fair to them, but did not help us out at all. And of course, Scotland had a brilliant season with Celtic winning the Europa League. That wasn't helpful either. But now on to this season, and we ended up in a group with Celtic, Benfica, and Lazio. And I felt very good about that, and I had every right to be, as we managed to win the group. Not as comfortably as I would have liked. We did drop points against Celtic in both games, but we were able to get plenty of results elsewhere that made us win this group fairly comfortably. And of course, took points off of, well, an Italian side dropping out entirely was very helpful, and Benfica didn't exactly look up to much either. And obviously, just winning the group over Celtic made us very, very happy. So that was really, really nice. We got a very, very strong, well, I say strong, a very weak group, which really helped us out and did very well. Now, of course, Dundalk, I'm not going to go through it too much detail. They got in the Champions League group stages this season, which when we saw that, we thought, crap, because that's going to cost us points. They're not going to be able to do much. Even if they're a pot 3 side, they're going to struggle. So this is what happened in their group. Yeah. Dundalk got out of their Champions League group. They got a group with Barcelona, Man United and Hoffenheim, and they bloody qualified from it and got 4 bloody wins. Absolutely mental. They beat Hoffenheim home and away, as basically everybody did. In fact, someone didn't beat Hoffenheim away. Who was it? Man United? Oh no, it was Barcelona. But they also beat Barcelona at home and then won 2-1 at Old Trafford against Man United. And it was that win that allowed them to come second in the group and qualify for the knockouts of the Champions League. They've got Liverpool, by the way, and we have got Bayern in our knockout games. But the fact that Dundalk were able to get all those extra coefficient points and all the money they would have got shows that they really are on a next level right now. They're a bit fortunate in one of the games, but let's just be honest. They've done fantastically well to have an Irish side get out of their Champions League group. They've just come out of nowhere this year. Brilliant for them. Now, of course, we had a guaranteed side in the Europa League group stages this year, which was Sligo Rovers. Despite having barely any players, once again, they did in fact manage to come third in their group, which is good in a way, because it pushes them into the knockouts of the Europa Conference League, which is not bad. And they got drawn against Lokomotiv in there, so it's not the end of the world for them. I think they've done okay there. They got a draw against Sevilla, and they were able to beat PSV, I think it was. So that's not a bad result, and it enabled them to get above Ludogorets, because I was worried. As for the Conference League, though, it wasn't quite as good, as we had Derry City and Shamrock Rovers. Shamrock Rovers we'd expect to do quite well, but Derry City just weren't quite good enough. In the end, Derry City didn't even get into the groups. They got knocked out by Anderlecht in the final qualifying round. So they did reach that point, but that did cost us and made us be down a team. And unfortunately, it went quite poorly for Shamrock Rovers too, who in their group with Trabzonspor Zorya and Lincoln Red Imps, the only 2 victories they were able to get were against Lincoln. And as a result, they ended up coming third in their group and not qualifying out of it. A really poor show for a team that won this competition like 2 years ago. So that's a real shame for them. And you can see how this was really lagging Ireland. Thankfully, the success of us in our group, Dundalk in theirs, and Sligo's vague success has still kept us afloat, because it's still 11.4 points on the board for us this season, which is still a very good response right now. If we can keep pushing and hopefully have other stuff go our way, it could help us. But the key thing is, as things stand, we would actually jump from 7th to 4th in a single season. So we'd skip the part where you have 6 teams in Europe. We'd jump straight from 5 to 7 at this rate if it was to happen. And you can see the gap that we've managed to accumulate over Scotland, because France have had France have been okay this season. Germany have been terrible, and as a result they are so far behind us that it would take a miracle, particularly if we knocked Bayern out as well. I think that would pretty much end any chance Germany had of letting us not overtake them. But it's the fact that Scotland are the biggest performers out there, and they're still 2.5 points behind us. We just have to manage that gap and hope that at the end of this season we could potentially be sitting in 4th spot coefficient wise out of nowhere. Now, part of me almost kind of wants to go to 5th or 6th and then 4th, because I don't know if we've got 7 sides that are capable of doing well in Europe. St Pat's and Derry City would be the guys that would get those extra spots, probably. And they are the ones taking our loan players. And maybe if they were to get into Europe, they'd start taking a load more because the money would come in. But I'm not exactly confident in them right now, because remember, that would divide all of our success by 7 teams instead of 5. And I just don't know if we've got the strength right now. But it would also guarantee lots and lots of money to all the other Irish sides, because then we'd end up with Sligo and Bohemian and Dundalk guaranteed group stages of the Champions League, which might cost them to be whipping boys for a couple of seasons. But the sheer money they would get for playing in that would hopefully strengthen them to the point where they would start to become hegemonic themselves. And it's a difficult spot. The same thing happened in Norway. It's a very different hurdle to overcome, but we managed it. The fact that Dundalk have already qualified for the knockouts of the Champions League before we even had the 4 spots, that was not something that happened before with Norway. Molde never did that, not until a few seasons of consistent 4 spaces. So still, very, very good news. And you can see squad-wise, obviously, we already looked at the goals earlier, but I'll just have a look at, you can see Ado Ujo's development. He's looking very nice indeed, worth a lot of money. He's got 22 caps for Portugal already at 21 years old. Stefan Valev, again, 22 caps for Bulgaria. He has developed like nothing, like nobody's business. He's got 14 finishing now. He had 8 finishing when he came in. He's still only 20. He's just been flying this season. Easily one of the best players at the club. He's been amazing. Bilbia as well, just out of nowhere, playing that same role as Valev. Looks an incredibly good player. Lukacic is developing brilliantly. Another guy with 22 caps at the age of 20. Look at his value. Like, we knew this guy was going to be special, but he's just looking more and more special by the day. Radojic is coming on leaps and bounds now. He's worth 80 million quid. He's our backup left back. And we've actually got a guy out on loan at Dundalk who's worth like 60 million. In fact, two of them, I think, who he could get in our side now. But obviously having them there is really useful. And the squad, I mean, we're nearly worth £1 billion now. We are in a really good spot. And the team is looking fantastic. And I feel like it is Bayern, right? Just occurred to me that in this part of the save, the draw hasn't actually happened yet. But I'm almost certain that it is Bayern that we drew. So we forgot to do it on stream. But needless to say, we're in a great spot right now. Ireland is just going to the moon currently. We actually found a player called Neil Armstrong, but that's a different story. We are in great shakes. Just continue to develop this side. Players are aging out of the team and they're being replaced by better players coming through. And this second round of Dynasty, I think, is the one that takes us to the moon, really. With Alaku as the captain, the rest of this team around him, those next wave of defenders, so with Neslo and Lukacic, those guys coming through are going to push us to another level. And they already are do. I think we've got a really strong chance of getting into a Champions League final again this season. Dundalk really have little chance, so I think it's going to rest on us after Christmas. But I think next year, with the way that things are structured in the league, I think we'll have a really strong season for the other Irish sides. They're looking really ready to go now, with Bowes being back in business, Dundalk still looking fantastic, Shamrock still looking decent, and then it's just a case of can Sligo sort themselves out, and will Derry City and St Pat's have to come into play in the next couple of seasons. But needless to say, I'm hoping that at the end of the next video, or at the start of it, I'll be telling you, right, we're 4th place, let's go grab that 3rd, and let's go grab that 2nd, because honestly, they're not that far off. So if you have enjoyed this, drop a like, that'd be lovely. Join me over on stream right now, where we're trying to sign some more players. Oh yeah, I haven't looked at the budgets. Sorry, the budgets are quite large. We've got 102 million in the bank in terms of transfer budget. So, and I mean, just look at the list of players that are joining us. It's exciting times. Anyway, if you have enjoyed it, drop a like. New to the channel, subscribe. I'll see you guys soon. Hold your gun. Capybara. Bye-bye.